Mexico opposes U.S. intervention in fight against gangs. The Mexican president stressed that he will not accept any intervention from the U.S. after Washington designated the country's drug cartels as terrorist groups. This cannot be an opportunity for the U.S. to violate our sovereignty. Mexico only supports cooperation and coordination of actions, never bowing down or accepting interference, even violation, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said at a regular press conference on February 20. Her statement came after the U.S. government listed a series of drug gangs as terrorist organizations, including some groups operating in Mexico. The list includes Latin American gangs Tren de Aragua, MS-13, Sinaloa, Jalisco New Generation, United, Northeast, Gulf and Michoacán, according to a decision signed by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on February 6 but not announced by the State Department until February 20. Jalisco New Generation and Sinaloa are the two largest cartels in Mexico. U.S. media recently quoted anonymous officials saying that the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, MQ-9 unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, have been secretly operating in Mexico to track down fentanyl labs and spy on the activities of drug gangs considered terrorist groups. The CIA's spying activities could lay the groundwork for the U.S. military to launch a cross-border, anti-terrorist, raid targeting gangs and drug labs in Mexico. President Sheinbaum said she would propose constitutional reform to protect national sovereignty in the face of this move. The Mexican people will never accept interference, encroachment or any other move from outside that threatens the territorial integrity, independence and sovereignty of the country in the sea, airspace and land, she stressed. She also proposed increased penalties for those who smuggle weapons into Mexico. The majority of weapons used by Mexican criminal gangs come from the United States. Mexico will take further legal action against U.S. gun manufacturers for failing to regulate their supply chain strictly enough, allowing large quantities of weapons to cross the border and fall into the hands of criminals. According to President Sheinbaum, the lawsuit will argue that U.S. arms companies are colluding with Mexican criminal gangs. Previous Mexican presidents have repeatedly lobbied the U.S. not to designate drug cartels in the country as terrorist groups. They argue that this type of crime does not have a political goal like terrorism, but is committed for profit. The U.S. designation of Mexican drug cartels as terrorist organizations also has the potential to impact the flow of illegal immigrants to the U.S. Many immigrants have had to pay ransoms or bribes to these gangs to reach the border and then seek asylum in the U.S. Such cases could be charged with supporting terrorism under U.S. law. After taking office on January 20, President Trump signed an executive order declaring a state of emergency at the southern border and identifying cross-border drug cartels as a national security threat beyond the level of conventional criminal organizations. Tom Homan, the top U.S. border official, declared that drug cartels will now face the U.S. military and predicted that violence could escalate. According to CNN, U.S. flight attendants praised for outstanding response to plane flipping over, as the plane carrying 80 people came to a stop after skidding and flipping over on the runway in Canada. Flight attendants calmly guided passengers out of the emergency exit. Leave everything behind. Leave everything behind. Come on, a flight attendant ordered in a firm tone, asking passengers to quickly exit through the emergency exit. Put your phones away. Video captured by passenger Pete Kokoff shows the flight attendant standing on the cargo hold, guiding passengers away from the overturned CRJ-900 plane on the runway at Toronto Pearson Airport in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada on February 18. They did an outstanding job as first responders, said Sarah Nelson, international president of the Society of Flight Attendants, CWA, which has more than 50,000 members. This is why we are on the plane, to safely evacuate passengers in an emergency landing situation. She said, they did a great job. 2 flight attendants on a CRJ-900 operated by Endeavour Air, a US-based company of Delta Airlines, helped dozens of passengers evacuate the plane that overturned on the runway. Flight attendants are tasked with making passengers comfortable by handing out drinks, food, blankets and headphones, but most importantly, keeping them safe, a job that requires extensive training and constant practice. They have a lot more responsibilities than picking up trash and serving drinks, said Michael McCormick, an associate professor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. They are professionally trained to keep passengers safe, and they do an incredible job. The identities of the 2 flight attendants on board are not yet known. According to Nelson, the flight attendants followed their training, which includes evacuating passengers when the plane has landed and is upside down. According to the procedure, Flight attendants will quickly locate the emergency exits. Ask passengers to remain seated or stand back until the flight attendants determine the scene is safe. They will then instruct passengers to unbuckle their seat belts and go to the emergency exits. During the evacuation, flight attendants will ask the first two healthy passengers to stay outside to help others leave the plane. Passengers will have to leave their luggage behind to avoid hindering the evacuation or slowing down the time it takes to leave the plane. The biggest risk is that the fire engulfs the cabin before everyone gets out, Nelson said, noting that flight attendants are trained to evacuate all passengers within 90 seconds. These skills become second nature to flight attendants, making them automatically respond to situations that would otherwise cause panic. That's why we have to be trained, she said. In almost every review meeting about serious situations that have happened, flight attendants say, "I can't believe it, we responded exactly as we were trained." Training programs vary slightly by airline. Delta Airlines requires flight attendants to undergo 7 weeks of training upon hire. U.S. aviation regulations require flight attendants to be trained in a range of emergency situations. From evacuations to firefighting, cabin decompression and hijacking, flight attendants must also receive additional training every 24 months. Air travel is still the safest form of travel, Deborah Flint, CEO of the Toronto Airport Authority, said at a press conference on February 18. The National Transportation Safety Board recorded 1.133 aviation incidents between 1983 and 2017. The agency defines an aviation incident as one in which at least one person was seriously injured or the aircraft was significantly damaged. Only 35 incidents were considered major, meaning the plane caught fire. At least one person was seriously injured or killed, and the plane was extensively damaged or destroyed. I want to thank these heroes. Thank every flight attendant and pilot on Flight 4819. Flynn said. The CRJ-900 tilted to the right as it landed on the runway at Toronto Pearson Airport on February 18, causing the right wing to scrape the ground and break off, sparking a large fire. The plane skidded on the runway, rolled and broke off its left wing, before coming to rest upside down. All 80 people on board the flight, including 76 passengers and 4 crew members, survived, although 21 people were hospitalized for injuries. As of February 19, 20 people had been discharged from the hospital. According to Delta Airlines, the cause of the incident is currently unknown.